Hi, the presentation today is on the Antichrist. And the lady who really would like this one is unable to make it today. So gladly we're recording it, so hopefully she gets a chance to look at it again later. Evelyn really enjoys these types of presentations. So I gave her a couple of choices for this week and she picked this one, but then she said she couldn't make it. So there's some things about this subject that people find fascinating. There's some things people get really excited about that they just don't know. And it's really important to have that concept. There's certain things that you do know, that you should recognize, that are very helpful for you. And there are some things that people have opinions about. So it's good to know the difference between the two and not to get too excited about difference of opinions. One of the best examples of that was a discussion that was happening and watching the politics in the States and looking at it, and along the way you see them beating up each other and you start thinking, wait a minute, almost all your positions right in this little group here are almost the exact same. You're beating up each other. The enemy is not each other. The enemy is the people that want to do the exact opposite of what you want to do. And occasionally that's the way it seems sometimes with churches, that when you had difference of opinions a little bit on various subjects, all of a sudden people forget who the enemy is. The enemy is not each other that's really striving to do what's right. The enemy is the one who's wanting to do something totally against it. So when we look at the subject, the Antichrist, very simple here. Anti means the person who's against, and the term Christ is the anointed one in the Greek, or in Hebrew, it's the Messiah that's coming for Israel. So it's anyone against the anointed one or the Messiah. So I put down here simply, different terms. Jesus, they're against the Son of God, they're against the Word of God, they're against the lawgiver. That's the person, anything against that, that's what people are looking for. But generally when people talk about the Antichrist, they want to know who is the person at the end time. And there's some very strong opinions held on various different things. So I'm going to go through a number of different passages, and I'm going to go through some historical context on different passages, and some different ways to look at it, and some opinion in there. But in the end, there's certain things that have to be known, and a lot of things aren't that really important. So it's important to be able to separate the two as to what's really important that has to be known. By the way, I've been trying to go shorter, so like my Bible study I recorded last night was less than 30 minutes. This one's not short, because I went to so many different passages. So, in Daniel 11, oftentimes people go back to this. Daniel 11, it talks about imposing taxes on the glorious kingdom, and it talks about somebody coming on peaceably and devising plans against the strongholds and going against the king of the south with a great army. And I'm trying to paraphrase to speed it up a little bit. And both these kings' hearts will be bent on evil against each other. And while returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the Holy Covenant. So this king, his heart will be moved against Israel. So he shall do damage and return to his own land, and at the point in time he shall return and go towards the south again, but it shall not be like the former times, or the latter, for the ships from Cyprus shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against the Holy Covenant, so we'll go back to Israel again, and do damage. So he shall return and show regard for those who forsake the Holy Covenant. So he should do a lot of positive things for people who do not like the Holy Covenant that was in existence. Forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress, and then they shall take away the daily sacrifices, and place there the abomination of desolation. Those who do wickedly against the covenant he shall corrupt with flattery, but the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. This whole picture here is a picture of something, and actually of someone along the way. And everything that went through there is a perfect historical picture of something that has actually happened in history. And all those different actions from King of the North to the King of the South and Cyprus and all these are actually pictures of exact history that actually transpired. But people oftentimes when they look at these passages, they think of it only being from a futuristic perspective. Well, to Daniel, what we would say is history now was the future. But there was a lot of history with respect to that. And it says, after this, and those are the people who understand, shall instruct many. And for many days they shall fall by sword and flames. So people who knew God's covenant, when there was this attack and there was this war against them, they're going to still continue on, yet there's going to be captivity, there's going to be plundering. And when they fall, they shall be aided with a little help, but many shall join with them by intrigue. And some of those of understanding shall fall to refine them, purify them, make them white, until the time of the end, because it is still for the appointed time. And the king shall do according to his own will. He should exalt and make himself above every god, shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished. For what has been determined shall be done. He shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall exalt himself above them all. But in their place he shall honor a God of fortresses, and a God which his fathers did not know, he shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and pleasant things. So now he's talking about a king that doesn't really care about the religious components in the background. This king is king because he believes he's the bomb. He's king of fortresses. He's the most powerful. I got everything, and I'm making all this precious stuff in magnificence of my own power as he goes through this kingdom. At the time of the end of the king of the south shall attack him. The king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through them. He shall also enter the glorious land. And many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape from his hand. Then Edom, Moab, the prominent people of Ammon. And he shall stretch out his hand against the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. And he shall have power over the treasuries of gold and silver, over all the precious things of Egypt. Also the Libyans, Ethiopians shall follow at his heels. But news from the east and the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go out with great fury to destroy and annihilate many. And he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him. You have all that transpire. And it could be almost two different periods almost transpired amongst each other at those different times, and different descriptions. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Daniel 12, it says, at that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over all the sons of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall wake. Some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Now here's a perfect example of, this is talking about a time when people will be resurrected from the dust, shall awake and be to everlasting life. And then some will meet death forever. But when you read that, it looks like it's going to happen at exactly the same time. And throughout every book of the Bible up until Revelation, you get everything is going to happen all at the exact time when God comes to judge. And then in Revelation, all of a sudden, Jesus decides to say, you know, when this day of the Lord happens, it's going to be 1,000 years transpire from the time Jesus comes till the new heaven and new earth, when you guys thought all this was going to happen instantly. Well, it's not a surprise, because you know what else they thought instantly was going to happen after reading Daniel? They thought the first coming and the second coming of Jesus Christ was going to be the exact same time. All the apostles did. And they were all wrong. That's why I said, you know, some things really aren't that important if we get them wrong. But some things are really incredibly important that we can't get wrong. But, you know, this concept of saying things in the future as if they all might happen at one time is something that happens quite often in prophecy. For instance, God said he was going to destroy a nation. And he said exactly how he was going to destroy the nation through a different passage. And I'll have to pull that back out. I don't have it right here. But everything he said about destroying that nation came true. Some of it came true very shortly after it was said. Some of it came true when they were again attacked 50 years later. Some of it came true when they were again attacked for the last time hundreds of years later. In all, everything came true, and each attack was almost a sample of what was actually there, but not any of the three attacks are descriptive exactly of what was said. And people sometimes look at prophecy and they say, well, some part of it came true, so everything must have been at that one time. Or they say, this part of it didn't come true, so none of it can apply. It all has to happen again later. And that's not what we can see happen in history over some of the things that God actually prophesied. Different things could happen at various times, but it all eventually comes true. And it says to Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. How long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? And I heard the man clothed in linen who above the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, swore by him who lives forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time. And when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all these things shall be finished. Now that's a really interesting analogy, and again, at various times in history, people have said, well, that can be now because we're completely overrun. And the Jews have looked at that a number of different times in the past. I like to think of it, at one point in time, as Queen Victoria said, it's the people of the book that the sun doesn't set on. The people of the Bible that the sun doesn't set on. That was the British Empire as far as she was concerned. And she ruled when the empire became great. And that's her viewpoint. And I always find that that's beautiful, because other leaders haven't had that viewpoint, and they've ruled over the shrinking empire when they haven't had that viewpoint. But I like to say right now, the only Christian or biblical perspective that's involved really in any level of politics is in the States. And that could easily be shattered to never again be able to reign again, have that influence. And quite frankly, to me, that's something that can happen very shortly with huge changes, and people not realize how much that's held things back with huge changes for you and I. Daniel 12 verse 9 says, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified, made white, refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly. So if you're still black, there's a problem here, because you need to be... Obviously, it's not looking at things in that perspective, but sometimes people use the Bible, and a lot of times such literal type perspective. It's obviously the idea of the sins being removed, the marks against you would be against you. But people do use the Bible like that. And we need to, if you're going to really make things literal, you need to use it in the way the language was intended. But it says in this passage here, from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and comes to 1,335 days. But you go your way till the end, for you shall rest and will rise to your inheritance at the end of the days. Okay, I got a couple of questions with that. Number one, this is one of the verses people use, and it's one of the biggest verses people use for the concept that sacrifices must happen again in the temple. Is there anything that says this has to happen at the end time? Go back and look at that passage for a second. Is there anything that says this has to happen at the end time? This is going to happen. This is a future thing that's going to happen with some of the things that he just talked about, which is all in the future. But does this particular thing have to happen at the end time? And that's why I like to look back and say, people sometimes have this incredible concept of what details must happen, and not necessarily. Now, there's a lot of things that did happen. Antiochus Epiphanes. How many people are familiar with that history? Really familiar with that history? Well, if I go back here, and Daniel says that he was going to come to power, the king of the north was going to come to power with some intrigue and some deceit and devise plans. Well, Antiochus Epiphanes was not in line to become ruler. He's not in line to become next in ruler. His brother actually became ruler. And he went into Rome, into prison. His brother actually got him out of prison with one of his children, and then his brother was killed. So he's still not in line. It's his other brother's other son that should come to power, but he got killed, and Antiochus went back. He wasn't called Antiochus at that time, but he went back and he killed the guy that killed his brother. But since he still wasn't in line, he made a deal with the son that was in line to rule with him. And then a couple years later, he killed the son. So he was in power. So it was all this intrigue as he came to be the king of the north. And he was from Syria. He was the king of the north. And he was a pretty miserable guy. They considered him kind of mad, almost crazy type deal. But he went to Egypt. He had the wars of Egypt, the king of the south, as you go through the passage here. And he left Egypt and he made war against the Jews. And he went back to Egypt. And the problem with Cyprus is that Rome gave him a deal. If he stepped out of the circle he was standing in without agreeing to their deal, he was going to die. So do you agree with the deal or not? So he took their deal. And that was the thing that happened with regards to Cyprus, with him going. All these things actually happened, very historical. You can easily go back and have a look at it. Different things. And he went into Israel. And when he went into Israel, he had set up a priest, a high priest, that was not the real Levitical high priest, and not with great daily sacrifices no longer. So when he set that up, to go down a little bit here, in BC 171, he set up Menelaus. And that doesn't even sound like a Hebrew name, does it? He set up a high priest that was going to be supportive of Greek beliefs. And he, in essence, took away the daily sacrifices that were being offered when he set up this high priest in the temple. 3 years later, in BC 168, since there's no date set with these different things, it's just general time periods, a statue of Zeus, and sometimes people say a statue of Antiochus. Zeus, by the way, for the kids again, because I'm sure all the adults know this, Zeus was the god of gods. So he was the bomb of gods. He fathered some of the other gods. He was the god of gods, okay? He's the one that's usually stood there in a statue with the lightning bolt in his hand, or he's in another on the throne type deal. But the one that looks funny with the lightning bolt in his hand, that's Zeus. And when he set up the statue, they made a great big sacrifice with the pig sacrificed on the altar. And the Jewish people at that point felt desolate, is the way that it was described by the Maccabees, Book of Maccabees. Oh, this probably occurred in a period of 3.5 years during that time period. In BC 167, a rural Jewish priest from Modin, Mattathias, the Hasmonean, sparked the revolt against the Seleucid Empire, which was against Antiochus, by refusing to worship the Greek gods. And he instituted again the Hebrew biblical worship. So you go back and look at these time periods, and it's kind of a fascinating time period that went through there, because it was very accurate about what actually transpired between north and south through much of that different passage. But you know what? It doesn't fully complete everything in Daniel. It partially completes things in Daniel. So here's a question. Does the prophecy of Daniel all have to happen again? Sometimes people say it has to all happen exactly again. Well, in Matthew 24, they go to a passage like this. Matthew 24, Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, "Do you not see all these things?" Pointing to the temple. "Surely I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." So people looked at it and say, well, the Western Wall's still up, so there's still some stones upon another, so it hasn't been actually thrown down, so, there's got to be another temple to be thrown down. Well, it doesn't have to be another temple to be thrown down. They could still be knocked down really quickly with a earthquake, explosion, anything to be knocked down. What's left there. But it could be just descriptive of everything was going to be gone. And there isn't really a temple. There's a bit of a wall that they've got there, and there's some other little excavations that they got there. But the temple, for all intents and purposes, was completely destroyed. It says, now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, his disciples came to him privately saying, tell us, when will these things be, the destruction of the temple? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Now they're asking this question like they think it's all going to happen at the same time. When he comes, he's going to set up his kingdom. But the destruction of the temple happened a long time ago, and his coming hasn't happened. So, what about this timing in here? So he says and answers them, and he says, he's going to talk about the destruction of the temple, but he says to them, take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the anointed one, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you'll be all hated by all nations for my name's sake. So what's going to happen before any of this happens? All kinds of stuff's going to happen. And even though you're persecuted and killed, it's not going to happen before I return. All that's going to happen before I return. So don't think when somebody else says, no, I'm the one. It says, then many will be offended, will betray one another, will hate one another. Many false prophets will rise up and deceive many, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And this gospel, the kingdom, will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. So he says, all this stuff is going to happen, but my word's going to be preached. And when it's preached to all the nations, then the end will come. But then he goes back to verse 15. He says, therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. So who's the warning to there? The people who are in Judea. It's very specific. Why do they need to flee? Because there's going to be some terrible trial, tribulation that's going to happen right then, and you don't want to be there when that happens. Get out. But it says the abomination of desolation. Well, if Antiochus Epiphanes was the abomination of desolation, that time period has already transpired. But what was the attributes of that abomination? Somebody who sets himself up above all gods, and somebody that was in total opposition to the God of the Jews, somebody who was in total opposition to the religion of the Jews, which Antiochus forbid when he went into the Holy Land, and set himself up as God when he went into the land. Those are the attributes. Let him who's on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house, and let him who's in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and those nursing in those days, and pray that your flight might not be in winter on the Sabbath. You want to be able to get out of there quick when this happens, because it's going to be terrible. For then there will be great tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of the world until this time, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Antiochus' policy was directed at extermination of Judaism as a culture and religion. He outlawed it. Someone standing up in Jerusalem declaring Jewish religion forbidden. Is that possible in today's world? Well, Islam would like to declare that. They expect the Mahdi, the great leader who they will treat like a god, to be like that. Progressive socialist leaders have declared that the Jews aren't worth the trouble and would like to have that declared too, and many a time. They have traditionally said that they are for the people, but then the people automatically end up having a dictator as God eventually along the way. And that's what actually happens in all these cases, which has always been fascinating to me, is that in all these cases of Stalin, Hitler, you go look back through all the different communist leaders and stuff like that, they were just for the people. They were just the People's Party. But as soon as they got in power, they became the most vicious dictators ever known to those people. But they were the ones that were just for the people, right? And it's always nice, it's incredible to see how that balances over. When this happens, does this require the sacrifice portion to begin again? For a leader to actually show up there and do that, does that require the sacrifice? It could happen, but I don't think it's necessarily required by the prophecies. Did the Romans at the destruction of Jerusalem declare the Jewish religion forbidden? Yes. And eventually they got to the point they didn't even want it to be allowed to be called the land of Israel anymore, so that's when they made it the land of Palestine. Before that, it never existed as Palestine, and there was no such people as Palestinians except for people that lived in the land. Up until that point in time, it was the land of Canaan and then the land of Israel. That's the history with respect to it. The only people you see as Palestinians today are Arabs. Not that they were some kind of a family ground for Palestine. It was Rome in the 2nd century that declared it to be called Palestine because they wanted to eliminate the Jews from history, period. Progressive socialist leaders have declared that Jews aren't with, when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, they did declare the Jewish religion forbidden, and they killed probably over 1 million Jews in Jerusalem. I think Josephus puts it at 1.1 million. And he survived as an historian, period. And he was became a slave at that point, something of that nature. Maybe the people in Jerusalem should have heeded the warning and fled. What started that war against the Jews? In AD 66, 3.5 years before the destruction of the temple, they decided that they were going to go into the temple and offer unclean sacrifices that offended the Jews, and the Jews revolted and started the war. And you had what time period? An interesting 3.5-year time period again, where somebody went into the temple, defiled it, and had no reverence whatsoever for the God of the Jews. And eventually they came in and totally destroyed it and made the religion forbidden. And I say this because you get these things repeating. Some of these things repeating again and again. And that's happened when the temple was totally destroyed at that point. Now, for the Jews, for some of the prophecies to come place, they must have the temple built and sacrifice happen again. For Christians, that does not have to happen. But for Jews, that must happen because there is a prophecy in Jeremiah where it does say that when I bring you back to the land, because when they were kicked out of the land the first time, they were for 70 years without a priest and without a sacrifice for sins. And God said, when I set you back up again in the land, I will never ever leave you without a priest and a sacrifice for sins. So for the Jewish people, that has to happen again because right now they have no priest and sacrifice for sins. For Christians, when the temple was destroyed, we have our high priest. We have our sacrifice in Jesus the Christ, the Lamb of God. Does the prophecy of Daniel all have to happen again? Looking at Mark, I'd like to point out something different in Mark. Mark's talking about, because I think it's interwoven, some of the things that happened with the destruction of the temple, because they asked that, and what would happen at the end time. Some of these things are interwoven, but some of these things will happen again and again, and have happened again and again. But when he describes it here in Mark, he says in verse 9, But watch out for yourselves, for they will deliver you up to councils, and you will be beaten in the synagogues. You will be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony to them. And the gospel must be preached first to all the nations. But when they arrest you and deliver you up, do not worry beforehand or premeditate what you will ask, but whatever is given you in that hour, speak that, for it is not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. And when you look at that, you could say, all these things happened to the apostles and stuff. They were actually delivered up in councils. They were beaten in synagogues. They were brought before rulers for Christ's sake. And they went out to preach the gospel throughout the world. But the attributes in here that came again against the people. Now, brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child, and children will rise up against parents and cause them to be put to death, and you will be hated by all for my name's sake. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. Man, that's a pretty nasty combination as you go through there, because, you know, if you're hated by people who are your enemies, what does that matter? If all of a sudden you're given up to be killed by your children, is that a little bit harder to take? You know, it was, to me, unfathomable. This concept here would be unfathomable to me when I was younger. When I went back to my grade 8 class, one of my teachers had asked what people believed as far as religion in the class. 28 out of 30 people believed Jesus Christ as the Son of God. Public class. One was Hindu, but had a great appreciation for Christianity. Because of the way they treat the stranger and their neighbors, regardless of whether or not they believe the same or not. And one was an atheist. And boy, he was raised to hate Christianity. He was in grade 8, so it's kind of fascinating now because he's 13 years old, so it was really the influence of the parents at that point in time, but he was really raised to hate Christianity. But the concept of the world around us was the morals of the Bible were morals. Really, there was some things that people said, you know, they should be free to do something different if they want to do something different, but the concept of morals was what was in the Bible. There was not a whole lot of differences in that. Now we have a world around us where the concept of morals is what's politically correct. It's not what's in the Bible anymore. You know, the concept of being opposed to homosexuality, well, I should be able to hate you because you don't agree with homosexuality. That's politically correct. But that would have been anathema to the world that I grew up in. That's a huge change. And when I say that is because when the people turn on you for following Jesus, eventually your idea of what's right and wrong is opposed to the people around you. Everybody around you. It's no longer politically correct, which was once upon a time. So that people give you up. And when you look at that with regards to some of the atrocities that happened in Nazi Germany, some of the difficultest ones to take is when you saw that all of a sudden kids got turned and they were giving in their parents, their neighbors, their friends, and some of those stories, to me, are just still incredible to listen to. But that's the world that I think that we're seeing. 2 Thessalonians 2, where it talks about the man of sin. And again, referring to the future here. Sorry, this is cut off. I changed my format so that it'd be easier to see. The contrast wasn't good previous. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first. And the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Do you not remember that when I was with you I told you these things, and now you know what is restraining, that he may be revealed in his own time? So, you know, somebody else is going to come again who's what? The type of person who thinks that he is what should be worshipped. He's the one that's going to make everything great. He's the one that's the most powerful. He's the one that should be worshipped. But what's a description of him? The man of sin Should we be able to pick out somebody like that? Does it really matter if he's got any kind of power? Does it matter if he's got any kind of ability? Does it matter if he has any kinds of signs if he doesn't stand for the Word of God? And the answer should be no, it shouldn't matter. Are many people who call themselves Christian going to be really absorbed because somebody has the ability to do different kinds of signs and wonders, and they say, well, look at the power he has, so he must be of God? Yeah, there's millions of people that call themselves Christian who'll believe that. And that's why I sometimes find fascinating about some of the Catholic people I know, because they are so into signs that it doesn't matter what something stands for sometimes. They're just so impressed by the sign that it's disturbing. And what this person is like, well, he's going to be there until the person who restrains him has taken him out of the way, and the lawless one will be revealed, and whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. So he's going to die, period. That's God's end of the matter there. But he says the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all powers, signs, and lying wonders, with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who do not believe the truth, but have pleasure in unrighteousness. So you have this person coming who's got all kinds of great power, great ability. People are really worshiping him because of what he's doing. So he's probably saying he's going to make everything wonderful, but he's not making things wonderful for who? The people who believe the Word of God. He's not making things wonderful for them. Once you go through the passage here, you're going to find. And like Satan, he's got this appearance that he's all going to be righteous and helpful, but he's not. Revelation chapter 6. When I saw the Lamb open one of the seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures saying with a voice like thunder, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. Now, usually this is a picture that most people will appear as this great Antichrist type picture as you come through here. What are the descriptions? A crown, he's a leader, and a bow. He's going to conquer. He's going to military take control. He's going to take charge. The exact same description is what's actually used in the Islam religion to describe the Mahdi. Exact same. They agree that this person here is the Mahdi that they're looking for as the great savior and the great leader of the caliphate. Would he like to stand in the temple area and declare himself the one deserving of worship as the world religious leader? Yes. Yes, the picture that they have is somebody that they would like that. In 1 John 2, which 1 John's the only one that describes it as Antichrist in that term, it says in verse 3, "Now by this we know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. He who says, 'I know him,' and does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him." So, when somebody wants to come and say that they're representative of God, then they got to believe in the commandments of God. If they don't believe in the commandments of God, then you know what? They're not. And that's about as simple as it can be. In Revelation 13, describing the beast now, another descriptive of it. "I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And on his horns were 10 crowns." And you get all these grittable descriptors of it, but the thing is, what the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. So it said the man of sin, what authority he was going to have? All the power, the works, and the lying deception of Satan. Well, here's a description of that again. And what happens with the beast? Well, I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. So it was almost killed, but yet came back again. And all the world marveled and followed this beast. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" And he was given an oath speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. 3.5 years again. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. And it was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. So here you have a description again, but now you have a description with regards to the concept of kings as you're coming through here. And as it comes here, he's got the world power again. He's got world power is described in here. And he hates the saints. I find this is a cool descriptive as you go through history, because Satan always wants to attack the saints. Continuing on with this beast, it says, "He who has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saints." Well, the person who kills by the sword or is going to go into captivity, who, by the way, actually puts the dragon and the false prophet into captivity? Jesus. Not the saints, actually. But he's going to be led into captivity. But when this is transpiring, this 3.5 years, it talks about the patience and faith of the saints, having to overcome it, having to deal with it. And I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. So just like the other one had all the power of the dragon, so he had all the power of Satan and authority that is going with it. This one comes up and looks like he's a lamb, so he's a religious leader, but speaks like the dragon still, not like the Son of God. And what's his purpose? He causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. So this beast that came up, it looked like it was dead, and then it was healed again. He wants to cause everybody to worship that beast. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. And he was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So this religious leader that wants everybody to worship the beast, he wants everybody to worship him or kill him. Yeah. Again, I say in the Islamic religion, the concept of Jesus, which they talked about in our paper a week ago, he talked about it 2 weeks ago. 2 Sundays ago in the Kitchener-Waterloo Record, it had Jesus, and it has that, the Muslim Jesus, it has that probably every 3 to 6 months in the Kitchener Record. They try to put that in there. Well, they don't put in a few features of Jesus that Islam believes in. They like to say they believe in Jesus, that he was a great leader, but they like to say he's really an Islamic leader. They don't want to tell you that the Jesus that you believe in is actually the Messiah of Israel. The Jesus they believe in is actually the person that perfectly describes the 2-headed one that speaks like a dragon that's going to go out and cause everybody to worship the beast or kill them. And they think that their Jesus, when he comes back, is going to lead the killing of Jews in Israel. That's a lot different. It doesn't tell you about the differences. It tells you about some of the things that they might agree on between the two every time they do that article as an evangelical tool. But it says, he was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both... Oh, sorry. We'll skip down a little bit here first. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on the right hand or on their foreheads, that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Generally, does that mean much to us today? Not really. Did it mean much to the people who actually heard it originally? Most of them would actually probably have reason to describe that number with Nero. Nero became the Caesar in Rome and was actually Caesar in AD 66 when the Jews revolted from Rome. When the Jews revolted against Rome, Vespasian and his son Titus were given the command to wage war against the Jews. In AD 68, Nero died. AD 69, Vespasian became the beginning of the Flavian dynasty. In AD 70, 3.5 years later, Jerusalem falls. 1,100,000 killed in the war. 1,100,000 killed in the war, mostly Jews. The temple is destroyed. And again, I say it's a perfect time for let him who's in Judea flee. 1 John 2, talking about many antichrists, it says, little children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard that the antichrist is coming, even now many antichrists have come, by which we know that it is the last hour. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have continued with us. But they went out that they might be manifest that none of them were of us. But you have an anointing from the Holy One, and you know all things. I have not written to you because you do not know the truth, but because you know it, and that no lie is of the truth. So that's a very basic concept there. No lie is of the truth. Jesus is described as the truth. Who is a liar but he who denies that Jesus is the anointed one? Somebody who denies that, he is Antichrist, who denies the Father and the Son. Whoever denies the Son does not have the Father either. He who acknowledges the Son has the Father also. And you get this beautiful description that John goes in there. So it's a simple way for people to, look, if somebody wants to deny that Jesus is the Son of God, then you guys take warning. This is not somebody who's part of the anointed one. This is somebody who's against the anointed one. Who doesn't believe in the Son and the Father? Well, I put here Trinity is questionable as to unbelief, because depending on what somebody really believes when they hear the concept of Trinity, because different people will not actually take the dogmatic viewpoint of Trinity. They'll just hear the term Trinity. Yeah, I believe in the Father, I believe in the Son, I believe in the Holy Spirit. So what? I believe in all three of those, but I don't believe in the doctrine of the Trinity. But a lot of people who say that they believe in Trinity really don't know the doctrine of the Trinity, and I've always been fascinated by that in a Protestant background. Many so-called mainstream Christians today, though, don't believe Jesus is the Son of God. And they have that Jesus seminar every year, which is just blasphemous. They believe he was a good teacher, but he wasn't the Son of God. And I always listen to that and I think, that is nuts. If the guy was continually saying he was the Son of God, he was either insane or he's the Son of God. You know, you don't have much in between. But they have a usual twist. They don't want to believe that Jesus is actually with God and is the Son of God. There's a number of mainstream Christians that are in that. Islam. Jesus will be the destroyer of Israel, a Muslim prophet, but not the Son of God and not the Messiah of Israel. They do not believe he's the Son of God. Atheists, humanists, progressives, that does not believe he's the Son of God. A third angel followed with a loud voice. If anyone worships the beast in his image and receives his mark on his forehead and on his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever. They have no rest day or night who worship the beast in his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. I think that's a pretty good, strong comment that says, don't follow this individual, period. So if you want to know something about it, very basic. Don't follow this individual that's against Christ. Now, some people will say, well, what about if you got marked and you didn't mean to get marked, because the Jews that went into the concentration camps got marked. I say, I don't think that's got anything to do with this concept here. This concept here is somebody who's taken it upon their mind, taken it upon their actions, that they're actually going to follow the beast. And it has to be a willful acceptance of it. God nowhere through his word says, I tricked you, you're in trouble now. It's not that. It's about this conscious decision to actually do it. So, the fact that Jews actually got a number there, well, they were marked by the beast. It's got nothing to do with that. If somebody knocks you down, they send something in there. There's nothing that you had control over with respect to that. But sometimes people look at it in that way. But this is about somebody who's actually worshiping the beast. It says never do that. Never do that in any way, shape, or form. Don't be tolerant in any way. And it says, here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Okay, so you got this beast, and you got this beast going on. He's making war with the saints, and it says it time and time again. And it says, the patience of the saints and those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Descriptor again, time and time again, of the people that are opposed to what? The Antichrist, somebody who's against the commandments of God, against Jesus. And you have this battle. Well, what's happening to them? They're being persecuted. And you know what happens with the prophecy? Things have happened time and time again. And that's why I say the exodus of Israel was really a fantastic lesson for us. What happened to the Jews, to the Israelites, when God reached out to help? They were beaten. They didn't suffer any of God's wrath, but they sure had the hatred of the slave masters for the long time period in there. And when they first started suffering, well, you guys are the cause of our suffering, so it was even worse as they were getting beaten. But God had the end in mind. They were heading to the promised land. But as meant for us, and here he goes, there's going to be this challenge against you. Be patient. My salvation is coming. That's the concept of patience. My salvation is coming. It's coming against you. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, as a spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works follow them. Now, we don't normally think of death that way, but when you think of death the way that it's described from time to time again in the Bible, it talks about the dead being asleep. You went to rest, you woke up, it's a new day. And a new day with Jesus Christ. That's not so bad from God's perspective. And he controls it. From our perspective, it's incredibly sad because we're going to miss the person in the meantime. But from God's perspective, blessed are you, because if you followed it right through till that point, you're saved. Nothing bad can happen to you from now to then. You don't have to overcome. You don't have to be patient anymore. I'm coming. And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the one cloud one like the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. So he who sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. And the sixth angel poured out his bowl over the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up, so that the water of the kings from the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are spirits of demons performing signs which go to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to battle of that great day of God Almighty. What's common about demons compared to God? They're all against God. And that's the attributes of these people. But he says, behold, I am coming as a thief. Now, this is a description. You read that description earlier in Matthew, but you do a description here. I'm going to come suddenly, surprised. Look, there he is. Not going to have a lot of preparation for it. And the point of telling you that, look, there he is blessed is he who watches and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. I'm coming as a thief, so when I show up, all of a sudden you turn around, there I am. You better be ready. And that's the warning. You better be ready. Don't be caught surprised with your pants down. I guess that makes more sense to married couples. Don't be caught surprised with your pants down. And that's kind of the way that it was pictured through here. Don't be caught surprised. It's going to be all of a sudden. It's going to be, don't be caught with your shame. And they gathered them together at a place called in Hebrew Armageddon. Probably one of the places where the most wars have ever occurred in the history of earth. North of Jerusalem. And the seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, "It is done." There were noises, thunderings, lightnings. There was a great earthquake. Such a mighty and great earthquake has not occurred since men were on the earth. And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon was remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and talked with me, saying to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters." Okay, now you have the woman who's on many waters, and she's full of abominations and filthiness of her own fornication, and she's given birth to all kinds of other harlots. Well, these things are nothing representative of Jesus Christ. So if this is representative of the woman, this is representative of the Antichrist, certainly we should be able to tell the difference if we're looking to the commandments of God and Jesus Christ. And that's what's important. It says about this woman, drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. Why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. Okay, so the woman and the beast are matched up here. Okay? The beast that you saw was and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. Here is the mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Now, when you look up that, you want to look up different cities in the world that have 7 hills, you're going to find hundreds. But if you want to look up 7-hilled cities, what's the number one that's always going to come up? Rome. It's going to come up. It was intentionally founded like that. You know what? The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman currently sits. I added the word currently. There are also 7 kings, 7 kingdoms down through time. The beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th and is of the 7 and is going to perdition. So the current one that sits is the 6th. Where did the current one sit that was coming as the 6th? Rome, the city that has 7 hills. And when you look through the various kingdoms, when you're looking in Daniel earlier, you start off with Babylon. And you go through the various kingdoms, and the 6th kingdom you come to is Rome. It was the current one, but not the 7th. And the final Antichrist is of the 7th. The beast that was killed as if mortally wounded but came back to life again, the 8th. The same description as you go through all these different times. The beast, 5 have fallen, 1 is, the 6th one, and the other has not yet come, and when he comes he must continue a short time. The beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7, and is going to perdition. He's not of the 6th, he's of the 7th. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, they will gather their power and authority to the beast, and they will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome him, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. And he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot and make her desolate and naked, eat her with flesh and burn her with fire. Wait a minute. The 10 horns in verse 12, which you saw, are 10 kings who receive no kingdoms yet, but when they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. So they're supportive of the beast, yet they're going to kill the harlot. They're going to kill the woman. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman which you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. And the very first great city that ran over the kings of the earth in Daniel was Babylon. The sixth one, which currently is with the 7 mountains, was Rome. It ruled over the kings of the earth. It was descriptive of it. It had the richness, it had the trade, it had the artisan. And he cried with a loud, mighty voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. And I heard now the voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. When he's saying that, is he saying coming out of a religion, or is he saying coming out of a city? He's actually talking about coming out of a city, all the way through the passage here. Come out of her. What is the city? It's the world leader, where the kings come to. It's the world leader in trade. It's the world leader for artisans, as you go through the description of it. Come out of her, lest you share in her sins. And verse 9, the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her will weep and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning. The city that intends to see no ill. I am the greatest city there ever was. Babylon, the city that reigns. Flee the city that rules the world, just as they were to flee Jerusalem at the destruction of the temple or perish. People are instructed to flee the great city that rules the world when the end comes. Attributes: leader in trade, famous for artists, kings submit to it. One man represents this city to the world. A man of sin. A man appears to be light to the world. A man who performs miracles, signs, wonders. A man who tends to stand in the Holy Land as if he is God. And a religion supports this king. Who is the Antichrist? Well, there's 3 major theories. One has been Rome and the Pope. There's some difficulties with that theory. But part of the reason for that theory is down through the years, Pope and the Catholic Church actually ended up becoming part of the military, part of the political system, and the religious system, and it became all combined. And for over 1,000 years, it was all combined. And they enforced it upon people. So it looked like it could be Rome and the Pope. Except when Rome was the city, the religious body was not the Catholic Church. The religion of Rome, when Rome was Babylon, was the imperial cult. And the imperial cult believed that if everybody worshipped Rome, the world would be great. We'd be at peace, we'd all excel, we'd get more roads, we'd have more trade, everything would be more wonderful. It was the emperor's cult that supported this religious body. Some people have the concept of New York and the UN Secretary General. Well, New York, because it's currently the world's leading city of trade, by far. It's still one of the world's leading cities for artists, artisans that you get described in it. It has the UN Secretary General and the United Nations there, which is at Turtle Island on Manhattan. And it has a religious arm, the World Council of Churches. Whereas if we would all bow down to the concept of socialism, world communism, which is even promoted now from the Pope, then we would all be saved. That's how sick I think the World Council of Churches is. And there's some pretty traditional fundamentalist churches that have joined the World Council of Churches over the years, including the Mennonite Church, which was no surprise along the road when Myrna finally told me that her mom's church said that they had to accept homosexuality. And they refused and became independent. But that's coming down from the World Council of Churches. You must accept and worship their system. Well, another example is the Majdi. Jesus being the false prophet and Majdi being the leader. Except the problem with Majdi as leader is, where do you see that great city today? The great city of the Caliphate. You know, when you look at the great city back when that ruled, as far as ruling the Middle East back when, it's still not there at this point. It's just not there. So people think, man, maybe sometime down the road. I say, you know, there's a lot of things that can happen, but sometimes things can really overlap and happen a lot different than people thought. So I put together this other option, a combination of the ones above. City of New York rules the world. Was it really part of the seventh? Not necessarily, but it's currently the descriptor of the one that rules the world. Maybe the Majdi becomes UN Secretary General. He's the Islamic leader. He's the world leader. He's got great science, lying wonders. You combine the two, wow. You've got billions of people worshiping him. 10 surrounding nations of Israel give their allegiance to the UN against Israel. Yet they're happy to destroy New York. That could easily take place. Because the 10 nations you see described in other places are the surrounding nations of Israel. Leader stands in Israel as God, a God that all must acknowledge. Everybody needs to acknowledge that this is the way things must go, and I'm the one that's going to lead you there. Do you think that could come about? Somebody standing like that? Having a bit of a uniting factor? How to overcome the Antichrist. Look for someone who truly supports God's words and God's commandments. Run from anyone who hates them. He is willing to speak the truth about Islam. Yeah, that's one thing that Jesus always did. He was never concerned about speaking the truth about the different religious peoples around. It's kind of fascinating. And why I say that, in Islam, it is forbidden to speak evil of Islam. Whoops. Regardless if it's true or not. Hence, Barack Hussein Obama never speaks evil of Islam. Never. He has regularly spoken glowing of Islam. Call to prayer is one of the greatest sounds they've ever heard. He's bowed down before him. And he has regularly spoken evil of Christians, which always should make you wonder why he says he is a Christian. Because that's kind of odd, don't you think? To speak evil of the Bible and people who believe in the Bible strongly, and yet you love everything about Islam anytime you're talking about it. Isn't it kind of weird that you chose to be Christian? To me, that's weird. Look for someone who believes in the Father and Jesus, the Son of God. But going back to that, this is being Sharia compliant. You can't speak evil of Islam. Pretty much all of Europe has, from a government perspective, has become Sharia compliant with respect to that. The government expects nobody to speak evil of Islam. And they're working really hard to now control social media, so much so that Twitter, you notice Twitter's have financial difficulties? Nobody's ever noticed recently? Twitter has decided to pretty much cut off all the accounts that aren't politically correct. They're starting to eliminate any of the popular accounts that are not politically correct. They started with a lot of the larger ones. So Trump gets to keep his account because he's too big a political target to hit, but various different supporters totally got eliminated along the way. But you can say all kinds of nasty things to Christianity, and you don't get cut off. And they've just been studying the concept with Twitter about setting it up that it goes through a matrix that they can automatically cut off people that they decide shouldn't be there. So for the longest time, there was all kinds of freedom of speech on the different social medias. But Twitter's right now is probably the one most politically led. And they're trying to set it up that they can totally control what's going to transpire. Now, why is that so important? Well, when you're looking at the younger generations, not me, you're looking at the younger generations, a lot of their viewpoints change instantly. So when you look at some of the last couple of primary elections they just had, the caucus in Iowa changed dramatically. You know who predicted what was going to happen in the Iowa caucus the day of the caucus? Twitter. Want to know why? Because they said they could tell that different social media comments that were actually transpiring, that all of a sudden Cruz was gaining more favor by people who were making their decisions late. Now, if you can control what ones are going to continue to be sent out and what lines are going to be cut off, boy, you can control a lot, can't you? And they're really striving to do that as much as possible, which is scary. Not somebody being able to choose what you're going to follow. You're only going to hear what they want you to hear. So how do you avoid this? Look for someone who believes in the Father and Jesus, the Son of God. Look for someone who comes to help Israel, not to destroy it. Submit to God, flee the devil and his world, and God will take care of you. In all those passages, it keeps saying that all time and time again. Flee the Antichrist. Flee the devil. Don't try to support it. Yes, you're going to be persecuted. Yes, he's going to have might. He's going to have some power. But I'm coming to rescue you. Be patient. Man, that's tough. You're going to see all kinds of torment. You're going to see people turn against you. You're going to see people turn against you from your right, from your left. There's going to be family members turn against you. But be patient. I will rescue you. I will save you. How did others overcome trials and persecution? Prayer, meditation, appreciation of other disciples, other people striving to do what's right. Faith in God, focusing on the good as opposed to filling your life with the bad. And do not worry. Because you know, when you see people being disloyal, the really close people to you being disloyal, it's really hard to be focused on the good, to be focused on loving when you feel that you're being beaten down. And God says, still be the right person. Be patient, be faithful, and don't worry. I've got you. In Isaiah 49 and Matthew 28, sing, O heavens, be joyful, O earth, and break out in singing, O mountains, for the Lord has comforted his people and will have mercy on his afflicted. But Zion said, the Lord has forsaken me, and my Lord has forgotten me. Can a woman forget her nursing child and not have compassion on the son of her womb? Surely they may forget, yet I will not forget you. I have inscribed you on the palm of my hands. Your walls are continually before me. I won't forget you. Jesus said, lo, I am with you always. His grace is sufficient in your weakness, trials, and persecution. He makes you strong. Love Jesus with all your heart, and you will overcome all things, including the Antichrist.